Welcome back to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. The archives and load up some other talks that I've got of these Bob Earll cassettes. I've had them sitting on a hard drive for some time now. I've decided to share them with you all. Let me know what you think. Some people loved Bob. Some people hated Bob. Bob was Bob, but he talked all over the world. I mean, he's from Los Angeles, Beverly Hills area, and did other things. I think he was a writer. Just click down below, like or subscribe, or both, like and subscribe. Just click down below, like and subscribe on my channel. It helps me out. Just a little click for you, doesn't cost you anything, and I'm bringing you some Bob Earll. And have a good day if you want to.
Good morning, I am Bob Earll. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. That's cool. You can get a lot of help, here, whether you want it or not. I've got Marie sitting in the front row with a statue of a Catholic saint. We were talking last night, which I'm sorry I missed your sobriety countdown. I would have stood at 33 years had I been here, but it seemed I could better use my time for the men's room. But Marie and I were talking last night after Howard talked. We said, no one ever asks us to speak at the old-timers meetings. And I went back to the hotel. I couldn't stay for last night's meeting because I was starving. I was sitting there at dinner and I thought, well, why the hell is that? I have been sober for a considerable amount of time here. And then I thought, well, I guess that somehow in AA, we have created an image that we like to present at our old-timers meetings. Kind of one of a certain level of emotional and mental stability. And there's a few of us that don't fit that MO. And God forbid you should ask anybody controversial to speak at the old-timers meeting. I'm delighted to be here on Sunday morning. This is great. The flea market was a little off-putting. I wore this collar for any Catholics that might, be guilt-driven because you didn't get to church this morning. I was sitting in a coffee shop in a hotel this morning having breakfast, and there was 4 rather large Christian women next to me. Now, don't hear that I'm saying anything bad about Christians. I'm just making, I want to draw this picture for you correctly so you get it. One was pregnant. Apparently her husband had stopped going to church. And the other 3 are going to help correct this situation without him there, which I thought was interesting. I found that amusing to start with. And then at one point, the one says to the young woman, she said, well, all you have to do is make the right choices. And my pancakes came out of my mouth. It was like, I thought, it's amazing how not only in the world of religion, but in the world of recovery, we just throw away these lines, like, do it, just make a right choice, Bob. Of course. And what information do I use to make this choice from? That information presented to me by my alcoholic father, who was rarely, vertical. How about the information presented to me by my mother, who was a child beater, and I was her only child? I mean, where am I going to make this choice from? What kind of information do I have? I just moved back to LA about 10 months ago. I've been gone 10 years. And I called a dear, dear friend of mine. She's sober about 6 months longer than I am. Julie, I'll give her credit. And I said, how's it going? What's going on? What's happening here in town? Bring me up on all the latest gossip. Who's who, who's what, what's, just fill me in. And she said, I think I'm making everybody really mad. Which is a concept I don't understand, of course, in AA. And I said, well, why? She said, I guess it has to do with what I'm saying when I talk. She said, but I'm just telling them, based on my experience, The number one reason I see people with a length of sobriety go out and drink again is because they have spent a great deal of their sobriety accepting things they could have changed. I went, whoa. I said, do you get the power of that one? I mean, do you know the truth of that one? I said, you know, most of my close friends and I, who we have taught, basically are terrified of confrontation. For one reason or another, we've grown up incapable of getting in there one-on-one and having an appropriate confrontation. And it's almost impossible to change things without some form of confrontation, even if it's just with yourself. You know? I mean, part of you says, well, let's stop eating sugar. And another part says, yeah, try it. Go ahead. Let's see how successful you are with this one. So I thought that's an incredible thing to look at. Like, how many times throughout my sobriety have I not changed something that I could? Why didn't I do it, and what happened to me because I didn't do it? Well, the first thing that happens to me when I don't do something about something that I should, that I know needs to be changed, I begin to very slowly give pieces of me away. And I give so much of me away eventually that there's nothing left. And then when there's nothing left of me, I'm dangerous. Because now I will react from a purely primal basis. This is when I will trash a marriage, walk out of a studio and tell everybody to go stick it. I mean, this is when I'm like, I've crossed the line now. If I've waited too long, there's no getting me back. I've been recently divorced, and we were in a session with the therapist, and I was completely nuts. And so I said to them before the session started, I said, you are going to want answers to questions I don't have the answers to. Do not push me for these answers. If I say I don't know, it means I don't know. And if you push me beyond that, I'm going to give you an answer. And the answer I will give you will be whatever answer it takes to bring these entire proceedings to a halt and get me out of here. It's that simple. Because I never grew up in a world where I don't know was an acceptable answer. And I'm just a little slow with stuff. You know, I'll come back to you in a couple of days, and I get it. You know, my wife used to say that I would always get where she wanted me to go. It was just the route that I took that drove her nuts. You know? I just don't get it immediately right away. Well, I grew up with an attention deficit. It's hard on me. School was a nightmare on me. You know, I was at the hands of a woman who used her fists. I'm at the hands of a woman who broke my nose, tore out the corner of my eyes, knocked my teeth out. She really did a job on me. Her anger and frustration at my father's drinking came out on me, you know? And I hear people in recovery say, well, that was yesterday. Well, it certainly shouldn't have any impact on today, should it? No. What the hell, Bob? If you're a real man, God damn it, and a true AA member, you'd stop whining about that stuff.
God, what a great guy. He was so funny.
Well, having had 7 marriages is an indication that there's some impact. From being raised by a violent woman. Now, it's not a logical, rational impact to the logical mind, but it's a highly understandable one to the emotional being that lives inside of us. And basically, the dynamic is this. Although I'm a 6-foot-tall, 200-pound male, and haven't met many people I've ever been afraid of in my life, you stand an overtly angry woman in front of me, screaming and yelling. I mean somebody who's off the chart. And I am immediately reduced to a 2-year-old, frightened little child that nobody's going to come help. So I don't relate then in this confrontation as a male, as a grown man, as an equal. I relate as a child who must stop this anger without getting hurt. So I'll do anything I need to do to stop you from being angry because it scares me too bad. And now we've lost all honesty in our relationship because I should be standing there nose to nose saying, hey, knock it off. When you can stop screaming and express yourself appropriately, come back and talk to me. Until then, I'm not going to listen to this. This is not okay. I can't say that. I just figure you'll get madder, and I'm screwed. And that's the impact that I bring forward from what went on when I was a kid. People ask me about they say, well, you've been sober a long time. I mean, how would you sum it up? I'd say 2 phases. 2 really distinct phases of recovery for me. One is I got in here at 26 years of age, almost dead, living outdoors, completely destroyed, did a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, just fried my brains. And so I had to deal with the consequences of my addiction. Go to meetings, sit down, shut up, listen, read the book, sponsor people, make coffee, move chairs, mop the floor, get a year, get a panel, go to an institution. None of it did I want to do. Not one lousy thing. But I was besieged by sponsors whose concept was, you do this or you die. You go back into institutions and carry the message, or you'll wind up living back there. You set up the chairs or I'll break your back. I mean, it was just a constant, sort of steady, we care, I love you kind of nurturing basic beginning recovery, which worked for me. I had only one problem in sobriety of any major proportions. As crazy as I was, and that I had no place to live, I could sit in the meetings and I could be quiet, and I couldn't hear a lot, but it was okay. And the first thing I ran into is I did not get what you said, and I did most of the things you said don't do. That just seems to be part of my nature, from being a kid. And you say, well, how come? Why were you so rebellious? Well, when I was little in school, because I couldn't pay attention, I was embarrassed a lot and humiliated a lot. And they'd ask me to answer a question. Mrs. Cooney, I remember once, put 2 + 2 on the blackboard, drew a line underneath it, and spun on me and said, Bobby, oh, God. I remember Mrs. Cooney today, which is 53 years later. Okay? Mrs. Cooney was my 2nd grade teacher. I still remember Mrs. Cooney. She was a large woman with big black corrective shoes, almost like stormtroopers' boots. I mean, at least they look like that to me anyway when she'd go across the room. So now here she is looking at me, and she wants an answer to this question. What she doesn't understand, and nobody in the damn class understands, is I have a few things I got to work out before I answer this question for Mrs. Cooney. The first thing I need to know is, why does she want to know? Children judge the outside world based on what's transpiring in their home. I'm being asked questions at home by a drunken father who doesn't need the information, and when I give it to him, I'm getting punched. So I'm just a little leery of throwing out information, okay? Once I decide to my satisfaction that it's part of Mrs. Cooney's job description to elicit from me that I have proof that I am in fact retaining the information she's dispensing, I move on to problem 2. Does she know the answer to the question? The same thing again, I'm being asked questions by parents who don't know the right answer to the question they're asking me. I'm giving them the answer and I'm getting punched for it. Well, we don't all react to the tension in an alcoholic home the same. I had next to me in the 2nd grade Susie, who I can still remember also 57 years later. Susie's father was the kind of alcoholic that the Christmas lights were still on the house in July, kind of thing. And if the lawn had been mowed, you could see them, and if it hadn't, the grass was so high you didn't know they were still on the house. Susie was going to make up for this by getting straight A's for her entire life. Susie was going to be what we commonly call the family hero. And the tragedy in that is that it works. In other words, people buy into that. Her family could hold up her report card and say, look at this report card. Our little girl got straight A's. Now, if she can get straight A's, we must be an okay family. So Susie knows that her job for the rest of her life is to hold up her family, shore up its self-esteem. I haven't seen her since grammar school. I bet you today if I found her, she's probably got more credentials than she can use and got straight A's throughout her life, unless she was blessed and began to drink at some point. Otherwise, she's highly neurotic at this point and probably rotting to death quietly inside. So Susie can't stand the silence any longer, jumps up, sticks 4 fingers up in the air and goes, 4! Mrs. Cooney is so proud of Susie because Susie jumped up and gave out the right answer. So one note goes home with Susie about how she has initiative and intelligence and knows when to step forward. And another note goes home with me about how I am a troublemaker and I'm slow and can't they do something. And they're sending this note home to people who don't care about my performance in school. So I mean, it's a waste of time. They absolutely did not care. So why I became so rebellious against authority is I continued when I was small to suffer that kind of embarrassment and humiliation until I was about 13 years old, somewhere in there, 12, 13, and I hit almost 6 feet. And at that point, my relationship with my instructors changed. I don't have to take it anymore. I don't have to let you embarrass me in front of other people anymore. I can take and throw your stupid books in the basket, walk out the door, tell you what to do with your books, and I know you're not sending me to the vice principal's office because I've already put a chair through his window and he don't want me back, okay? So you tell me don't do things and I'm probably not going to do them. Now what happened with the situation with Susie, which was really informative for me, was I spent all of recess trying to think of ways to kill her. You know, it was like, this girl should die for that. And it took me, years to get why I thought she should die, because she exposed my greatest secret. One of the things we know now about children who grow up in homes where there's mental illness, alcoholism, or drug addiction, and you may be an alcoholic parent, and you may not want to hear any of this stuff, and in the case I just suggest you leave, So the one thing we do know about those homes is for all the children, the energy is the same in its tension. All children who grow up in alcoholic, mentally ill, or drug-addicted homes grow up in tension like that. I mean, that's running through their house on a nightly basis and everybody pretends it's not there, What train, I mean, I used to step over my father who had the flu. Well, Jerry's father had the flu when he was sitting up, in a chair at home. John's father down the street had the flu. He was in bed. Mine is across the hallway, out, right? Little things like this tend to confuse children, tend to create tension. And so basically, if you grow up with enough tension, I grew up feeling like I was incomplete, inadequate, I'm insufficient. I do not recall ever being comfortable in my body. Just comfortable in my body. And I felt like I had a little spot somewhere down inside of me like rotting sewage. And that my role in life is to make sure you never, ever discover this little pot of sewage in me. And above that, I got to make sure you never disclose it to others. Because the result will always be one of 3 things. People will leave me and go away. They will make me go away. They will draw more attention to it and embarrass me publicly. So that was my big secret. I do not want you to know that I'm not okay. I've heard people say at the podium, they felt like everybody else got the handbook at birth, but then. A friend of mine talks about he felt like he was born behind enemy lines, and didn't have the code kit, how the hell to get a message out for help. So by the time I'm big, I don't have to deal with this. By the time I'm 15, they throw me out of Manual Arts High School in Los Angeles, and they send me to a high school called Jacob Riis. Jacob Riis was a high school for young men like me, who just didn't quite get along in the system at all, and reacted to the system with some form of violence. I had not drank, I had not used drugs, I was 15 years of age, I was in Jacob Riis High School. I want to give you some insight into my emotional makeup, because that's what my alcoholism and addiction is about. I lasted one day in Jacob Reese High School. And they called my mother and informed her they did not want me in the Los Angeles City school system. She said, well, what about this continuation thing, where he works and goes on the weekends? They didn't want me back. That's what I was like at 15 years of age, without drugs, without alcohol. That's how wired I was, how crazy I was, and the lengths I was willing to go to so that you would not know that I was not okay. 3 days later, I was in Hermosa Beach and somebody gave me a marijuana cigarette and a half-gallon jug of red wine. Do I have to tell anyone in this room what happened? It all changed. It all changed. I didn't feel inadequate. I didn't feel incomplete. I didn't feel insufficient. The little bubbling pot of sewage was gone. And for the first time, I was comfortable in my body. Like, yeah. First 3 years were wonderful, terrific, like driving a fine automobile down the highway of life, cruising the highway of life in a Rolls, I was sort of an amateur chemist. I could get up in the morning and create my day, a form of control that I enjoyed immensely. I could tell you when I hit the door how fast I was going to be going, because I just had it. I had the power in front of me. And then there's nobody probably in this room that doesn't know what happens next. One day I got up, put together the magic combination, and guess what? Didn't work. I was right back where I started from. Inadequate, incomplete, insufficient, uncomfortable in my body, and my sewage was back. The next 8 years were more like being handcuffed to the bumper of a fine car and being drugged down the highway. And that's not just a mental analogy either. I had the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department do that to me once, just as a demonstration to the other fellows in the neighborhood what would happen if they behaved like I had behaved. This is the period for most of us when it has stopped working, that those around us who are not addicted look at us and say, if it did that to me, I'd quit. And I didn't know how to say to him, you don't understand, man, all I want back is 5 more minutes. I just want to feel okay. That's all I want back. I just want to feel okay for 5 minutes. It was never to be. Through the power of a very loving God, I came rolling into Alcoholics Anonymous at 26. It was great. I didn't want to be sober, and the line that used to really make me crazy is people say, if you want what we have, and I could not grasp that line. I had no idea what that line meant. The only thing I could relate it to was the automobiles parked outside the Sunday morning South Pasadena meeting, There was a lot of very expensive iron, and I thought, well, if this is what they're referring to, do I want one of those cars? Yeah, this will work, I will stay for a car, and that would be okay. I didn't get it. I didn't understand. And, then there's this great line we have in AA. It's not printed anywhere about don't get emotionally involved the first year. That's one of my very favorite of the non-official AA cliches. I have no idea who started it. My guess would be someone incapable of having a relationship of any sort who didn't want anybody else to have a relationship of any sort. I think as far as working your program, if you get involved your first year, you'll spend a lot more time with your sponsor than you will if you don't get involved, You may get by with 2 or 3 phone calls a week if you're just kind of going to meetings, going to work, and, doing nothing. But you get involved and you'll be up to 3, 4 phone calls a day, with your sponsor. So this is a lot better as far as getting you into the program quicker. I was 3 weeks sober and they asked me to give a 10-minute talk. I gave my 10-minute talk, and in that meeting that night, the Arroyo Seco meeting in Pasadena, there was a young woman who had 3 months of sobriety. And she came up to me after the meeting. This story is true. Friends of ours know this story to be true. She came up to me after the meeting, and she said to me, informed me that her sponsor had told her that if she heard anything she liked at an AA meeting, to take it home. seemed like a hell of a fine idea to me, you know. It was like, I'm staying with these two guys and painting their goddamn house, you know, just to earn a place to live. So it made good sense. So we go home. We're together about a week. She has a complete mental breakdown and lands in a private psychiatric hospital in Arcadia. I don't have a sponsor. I don't know what to do. I mean, I feel responsible. I mean, obviously this is sober sex, you know. It's it's great for a week and then one of you goes crazy, you know. It's like... And I was afraid of that anyway, you know, from the beginning, that it would be something like that, having never participated in it sober in my life. And I did have serious concerns about it. So I don't know what to do. So I go to this psychiatric hospital every day with a big book and get well cards. And I know, okay, I get it. I do now understand you do not give mentally ill patients get well cards. I didn't know it at the time, okay? I meant well. It was well-intended, you know. We would sit by the swimming pool in this private, swanky psychiatric hospital and plan the rest of our lives together with God, in the big book. We were probably together off and on for about 18 months. We got married and lasted, you know, we kept separating and going back and separating and going back and separating and going back until nobody would talk to us anymore, you know. If you go back one more time, we're not speaking to you like we cared. You know? Like at that moment when you look at each other again and you go, well, who cares they won't speak to us? Come home with me, you know. No, you come with me. Okay, cool, that works. Then we didn't see each other for about 10 years. Just didn't see each other. Just kind of different parts of town, I guess. I don't know. And then in an Alano club in Burbank, which is about half this size, I went out there to talk one day, and I spotted her all the way across the room, and she saw me, and it looked like a Clairol commercial, man, as we went running across this Alano club for each other, you know, just like this. And we just wrapped ourselves around each other, and simultaneously we said the same thing. We both said, thank you for being part of saving my life. Okay? I trusted nobody. She trusted everybody. This woman would have asked a serial rapist to be her sponsor. You know? I mean, she just had no antenna. She had no antenna for dangers. I saw that we went to a meeting every day for her. I saw that we read the big book every day for her. I saw that we read the 12 and 12 every day for her. I saw that we read the 24-hour day book every day for her. So our match kept us both alive. Drove a lot of people around us insane, but it kept us alive because they just couldn't sit back and say, these are God's children operating in the palm of God's hand. They must be okay, you know, because that's exactly what we were. We were God's children resting in the palm of his hand. It may not have been comfortable for people who were viewing it, but it saved our lives. It worked for us. So AA went well for me. I mean, ostensibly, I had one small problem, and that problem was that each day I stayed sober, I got crazier. Other than that, sobriety was okay. It seemed like I had some residual hostility. And that most seemed to be attached to my ignition key for my car for some reason. I am a compulsive, obsessive person. What that means is I can take things that are good for me and almost kill myself with them. So when I hit on meditation about 8 years in, I thought, God, I like this. You can leave your body. And staying in my body has never been, you know, of a high priority for me under any circumstances. So I thought, I like this. I can get quiet. I can focus on the third eye. I can just hit that ship and I'm out of here for hours. So I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and meditating for 4 hours before I'd start my day. I am a compulsive, obsessive person. I would then shower, go downstairs, get in my car. This is after 4 hours of meditation. Okay? Pull up the driveway, turn out onto Doheny, and within half a block, someone would fail to use their turn signal. Now, having spent all this time in the thunder of silence in the lap of God and being really, truly, spiritually evolved at this moment, that within a second and a half would result in a 100-mile-an-hour chase down Doheny. Me with my head hanging out the window, screaming obscenities, foaming at the mouth like some sort of mad dog. If we were lucky, nothing happened and I didn't catch the people. If we were unlucky, I was probably found standing in their hood in the middle of an intersection, trying to explain to them the function of the small lever on the left side of their steering wheel. Well, I could hear my sponsor's voice screaming in my ear saying, on any given occasion, you may be the only example of AA a man will ever see.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
So now I'm so mad I can kill. I'm so full of guilt I want somewhere to hide. You know, it's like I couldn't win. And then I drive onto the meeting, pull into the parking lot of the meeting, you know, kind of wipe the foam off from, you know, frothing at the mouth, brush the hair back from being windblown, and walk into the meeting, and the greeter would be at the door, and they would stick out their hand, and they'd say, Bob, how are you? And I'd give the answer I had heard everybody give in my experience up till that point for that 8-year period from 62 to 70 in AA, when they had any kind of goddamn problem in their life, and they were confronted with it as a meeting, they said, fine. So I'd say, I'm fine, thank you. Well, Bob, why on earth would you say you're fine? You're not fine. You've just been screaming down the streets of Los Angeles at 100 miles a goddamn hour, completely insane. You're not fine. I also don't want you to know I'm not okay. This is back to being a little 7-year-old boy in 2nd grade who's weak and inadequate, insufficient and incomplete. And I do not want you to know that I am different from you. And nobody else was talking about being nuts sober, and I had not intended on being the first. I know, didn't work out that way, but it wasn't my idea. Never got past the 10th grade. To become a writer and make an awesome amount of money as a writer was really a magnificent gift from God. The downside of that blessing was I had no emotional skill on how to handle the success. There was nothing I could do about the success. I did not know how to handle the money. I didn't know how to deal with the people in authority at the studios. I didn't know how to enjoy my own happiness. I would sit home with people and watch a show on television I had written, and they enjoyed it more than I did. They got excited. They'd see my name on the screen and go, wow, man, that's far out. But see, I grew up in a home where any kind of overt expression of emotion got you punched. So I would just sit there quietly and say, yeah, that's cool, huh? Wow, what do you think of that? I should have been running around the room in circles, you know? Shooting off a water pistol, popping balloons, firing those little confetti things, saying, look at this, look at this. This is the little boy who couldn't answer questions in school. And he wrote every goddamn word of that. Look at this. Wasn't to be mine, not then. 17 years clean and sober. If you looked at my outside life, I could have been a poster child for Alcoholics Anonymous. Marie's laughing. She remembers these days. I was a successful writer. I was a writer on a hit television show. I had a penthouse apartment at the beach, driving a couple of expensive cars, divorcing wife number 5, who was beautiful and expensive. Had another gorgeous young girlfriend living with me who was also beautiful and expensive. They're expensive if you can't let them get mad. That's when they're really expensive. So, you know, my solution was always give them a credit card, let them go shopping. Let me make it real clear, guys, to you now, that's a real bad idea. No one can shop like an emotionally unhappy woman. Particularly if she's sober and shopping on the card of the person that she's pissed off at. It just ups the ante, man. I had this one chick slam dunk Rodeo Drive in an afternoon, you know, on a go-kart. Oh, God. But she wasn't mad anymore, you know? I mean, that was the whole point for me. Because I'm this frightened little kid saying, oh, God, she's mad, here, you know. Would I like to change all that? Yeah. Would I like to go back and do it different? Yeah, you bet I would. Would I like to have come out of making all that money as a television writer and say, geez, I have a home in the mountains in Arrowhead and one in Mexico and a little apartment in, over in Paris like friends of mine have who started the same time I did and made less money than me? Would I love to say all that? Would I like to have all that? Yeah, you bet I would. Wasn't to be mine because I did not have the tools to deal with the gift from God. God kept up his end, her end, whatever works for you, and delivered to me. I just didn't have the tools to deal with the gift. I needed the tools, but I didn't know yet I needed the tools. So 17 years in, my life looked perfect. Absolutely perfect. Money, success, recognition, beautiful women, 17 years sober, circuit speaker, spiritual giant. Ta-da! Put him on a poster. Here's this dumb kid from the streets, man. And because of AA, he made it. One small problem. Every morning when I woke up, I wanted to die. And I had been wanting to die every morning when I woke up for a long time. Because although the outsides looked great, the insides hadn't changed. I still felt inadequate. I still felt weak. I still was frightened. I still could feel that little bubbling pot of sewage, and I was not comfortable in my body. So I thought, geez, I think I'll go to therapy. I mean, I couldn't think of anything else to do. I'd been sober for 17 years. I hung out with all the other, circuit speakers. I knew too much about them to go to them for help. So it was like, it was like, where the hell do you go now? I thought, well, I know this girl who was really crazy. I mean, she was really crazy, and she went to this woman and got help. Now, I understand there's a lot of controversy in the program about therapy. Some is treated like black magic or something. And then people get this and say, this is all you need. Well, we won't even get on that because I'm already accused of hating this because I make statements like, does anybody give a shit that this was written 55 years ago? Would you go to a surgeon that the last book he read on this operation he's going to perform on you was 55 years ago? Or would you get some additional information? That's all. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. It saved my life, in case you haven't been listening. In case you have not heard what I have said, I was at the emotional end of my rope for about 10 years. And this book and these meetings and the things I were asked to do kept their promise to me. They kept me sober. I'm not saying this isn't good. I'm just saying this is 1996 and there is more. And they knew that, which is why they wrote in here, God will constantly disclose more. Constantly. And all I see as a reaction to the more being disclosed is contempt prior to investigation. Okay, so I know some of this may make you uncomfortable, and it's not meant to. I'm sharing my experience, strength, hope, and opinions. And if it makes you crazy... So, what I'm about to read to you is from this book, from page 133 in the sacred first 164 pages. Okay? Just in case you use this but don't read it. Now about health. A body badly burned by alcohol does not often recover overnight, nor do twisted thinking and depression vanish in a twinkling. We are convinced that a spiritual mode of living is a most powerful health restorative. I agree. We who have recovered from serious drinking are miracles of mental health. But we have seen remarkable transformations in our bodies. Hardly one of our crowd now shows any mark of dissipation. But this does not mean that we disregard human health measures. God has abundantly supplied this world with fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. Now, if you remember that Bill was a real good buddy of Arthur Ford's, who was a renowned psychic, and that he and Dr. Bob used to use the Ouija board, I don't even want to guess at what he meant by practitioners of various kinds. You know what I mean? I mean, it's almost frightening. Now, this is a real unclear statement, this next one. Do not hesitate to take your health problems to such persons. Most of them give freely of themselves that their fellows may enjoy sound minds and bodies. Try to remember that though God has wrought miracles among us, we should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. We should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. Their services are often indispensable in treating a newcomer and in following his case afterward. This is it, guys. 133 in the first sacred 164 pages. Lighten up. All they're saying is some of us are going to need some additional tools in order to travel this path. So if you are upset by those of us who use these additional tools, don't look at me, pal. You know, look at your own stuff. How come what I do bothers you? I mean, that's an excellent yardstick for recovery. So I go to see this woman. I sit down in her office for this free get acquainted visit. She says, start with your childhood. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I said, when I was 15 years old, they threw me out of manual arts here in LA. I went to Reese. And then I discovered the wonderful world of drugs and alcohol. Spent the next 11 years drinking, using, bringing narcotics in from Mexico. Rolled into the doors of AAA 17 years ago at 26 years of age. She said, I said, start with your childhood. You weren't born at 15. So I don't remember any of it. She got this very strange smile. By now, I'm just more than a little cynical about a lot of things. So I thought this smile meant when I left her office, she was going to call the Rolls-Royce dealer, you know, and say, I'll take the one with the full leather interior. I have somebody who's about to pay for it. I didn't know what she was trying to tell me with this smile was that if you have the courage to stick this out, I'm going to be here with you in this room when you meet the man you are, as opposed to the man that you have believed yourself to be for all these years. I had no choice, just like I had no choice in AA to not drink or use again. I had no choice but to stick it out. I had to keep going. I had to spend time with her that I just almost died, crying, screaming, yelling, crawling. Just the pain was awesome. When I was 10 years sober, when I was 8 years sober, just shortly after my deep meditation phase, I met a woman in AA, and we dated for 2 years because we said, oh, God, let's see if we can do it right. You know, both of us said, let's just slow down and see if we can't figure this out, which is a lethal statement. You do not figure out emotional stuff, but, you know, what the hell. We didn't know. So we said, let's see if we can figure this out. You know. So we dated for 2 years, and we decided this is a good match. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Marie remembers too. And so we thought, we can get married. We're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We were married in January. In February, they diagnosed the cancer, and in April, she died. People would come up to me after that, and by then, you know, I'm 10 years sober and a so-called AA guru, and people would say, Jesus, we're really sorry about Taylor, Bob. And this is the best I had to give at that time in my life. I said, she's gone home to be with her father. That's all I had, man. That's as deep as my feelings went. That's as far down inside of me as I could go. Yet I drank over feelings. Isn't this interesting? And I drank because it altered my feelings. Okay? 3 years into therapy, one morning, my therapist says to me, I think today, Bob, we need to talk about Taylor. And I said, okay. I spent the next 3 hours, which she had set aside, that I didn't know she had set aside, in some of the worst pain, crying and dying. I finally felt what it felt like to know that somebody who genuinely loved me would never be there again. And the pain was awful. And I went home and I spent 3 days at home, locked in a little condo up off the Sunset Strip. I couldn't get off the floor. This is how deep the grief was, how bad the pain was. Well, I'm still sober, so obviously it didn't kill me. It did good for me. I got it cleaned out. But that's what the feelings I've been running from all of my life are, that size. And I had to find a safe place to express them. I think there's a concept around AA. It's like, if you're in emotional pain, you're not working the steps. The only people I know in emotional pain are the ones who are in fact working the steps. I mean, it's like... It just keeps chipping away at all the defenses that I built up as a child to protect myself. Because when you're little, you have no recourse. You're stuck. You can't get this stuff up without some kind of unacceptable response, whether it's just that the parent withdraws their love and goes away, or they flat knock you down and give you a bloody nose. But somehow, it's not a loving and nurturing response. I got married about 9 years ago, and all Tina and I could think about was having a child. And I have no children in sobriety, so it wasn't high on my, list of things to do now that I'm not drinking and using. And I was 25 years sober then. And so we had this little girl. And now I get it, that there's a lot of information out there. So while Tina was pregnant, we read books like crazy because both of her parents were raging alcoholics and I had my mother and my father. So we knew we weren't really equipped to be parents, that perhaps we needed just a little more information than we had if we were going to do this thing, be a mom and be a dad and have a child. So we read like crazy about, self-esteem and nurturing and love and giving them space and letting them get their power and, oh, Jesus, God, just tons of stuff. Till I had a headache. And then this little person was born. And for me, it was like, I was furious in the labor room. I mean, I'm a person who likes to do things, if you can't tell that, and don't have a lot of concern about what people think. I mean, my own quiet, private, at-home personal motto is I pray, dear God, that I be hated for who I am than liked for who I pretend to be. I mean, just, this is my life. But I'm in this labor room, and I want to do something. I don't know how many of you guys have been there lately, but there's nothing to do. So now that I've had a few years of therapy, I can stand in the middle of the labor room and cry. That was it. That was my some participation in this great event. It's like... I mean, Jesus, let me move the bed or a light or roll an IV, something. Give me something. I'm a guy. I need something, Just let me roll a rock. I don't give a shit. Something. Give me a hammer, something. But all I could do is just stand there and cry as this little girl was born. And we take her home with us, and she's home, and she's our daughter, and she's there, and I go in at night, and I would look at her asleep in her bed, and I would just cry. I was just so overjoyed that this little person is in my life. This is all stuff that wasn't available to me before I got some additional tools. And the additional tools wouldn't have done me any good without AA. So it's a package deal. You get it? It's kind of like, people say, for definition, Alcoholics Anonymous to me is like a table. A real big, solid, strong table. And as a child, I was like a picture puzzle. You know a picture puzzle? And it's as if I was just taken and thrown against the wall and just broke into 100 pieces. And so AA provides for me the table with which I get these pieces of me and I put me back together on this table. I couldn't do it without the table, and I couldn't do it without the other tools that allow me to find the pieces. So I'm like adoring this child and loving this child, and I would hold her and I would tell her how thrilled I was that she was my daughter and how thrilled I am that she's a girl and how glad I am she's in my life. I mean, this is all this little baby heard for, the first couple of years of her life. But there was one dynamic that really struck me. When she and I were at cross purposes with each other, she wouldn't do what I wanted to do or wouldn't stop doing what I needed for her to stop doing. My immediate reaction was to double my fist up and catch her in the corner of the eye right here. This is internal now, get it? Okay? But that's my immediate reaction. That's what I was trained to do. That's how I respond to this conflict. You see? Because I'm still getting new skills and new tools to deal with it. I don't hit her because my wife and I have a deal. When either one of us is in a bad emotional state, we pass her off. And if both of us were in a bad emotional state, we'd find a neighbor kid, and say, here, play with her. We'll be back in a minute as soon as one of us is in better shape to deal with this child. Because it was hard for us. Both of us are older, and it was a lot of work. Oh, Jesus. Sleep became a memory, It's like... And we go to these, everybody, all the women who were in the birth class, you gather after with your babies and the husbands and all that, and they're all, talking about how great their sex lives are, and Tina and I are looking at each other like, huh? What? We get 4 minutes, we're, it's like, then as the divorces began to come, we get it, they were lying. Just trying to look good. Okay, so I don't have to hit her, but the instinct is there. I don't want you to get the idea that I'm some kind of perfect, blessed, always kind father. But I want to tell you, to be in the presence of a child, today she's 8 now, and when I got the divorce, it was the pain of Taylor's dying. The first time I had to go back to New Mexico and visit this little girl and drop her off home. I have never experienced anything like that. I was 32 years sober, and all I could think about was medicating the pain. I thought, I know a half a dozen psychiatrists are good friends of mine. I just want 10 days. Give me a break. I cannot do this pain. I've never hurt that bad in my life, having to give her back. It was like, ugh. I go back to the house I'm staying with friends of mine in New Mexico, and sitting in the living room, least I forget that God still watches me all the time, is one of the very psychiatrists I was thinking about. And we spent the next hour and a half with me screaming and yelling and crying and dying and talking about the pain. And then he spent a half hour crying and telling me about the pain of taking his son back when he was newly sober and his little boy was 8, and he'd go home to his apartment and he'd throw up. It hurt so bad to drop the little boy off. So I was okay. I got a place to get it out. And the next day when I went to see her, it got better. And I think sometimes there's a tendency to look at those of us in sobriety and recovery and say, he's 32 years sober. My God, look at his pain, and say that we're not working the program. It is just because I've worked the program that I can experience that pain over this temporary loss of somebody I love at that depth. So what do I have in return? I get to spend the summer with this little, I can't wait, man. She's going to be here for the whole summer with me. And this is like, yes, absolutely. What are you going to do? I have no idea. What do you do with an 8-year-old for a summer? This will be the first time. But we will work it out. You know what I mean? We will think it up. And when we were in the divorce and the separation, we got her own little therapist. You might say, oh, God, therapy. She calls her talk feelings lady. Someplace she can go, she feels safe, she can talk. And she's getting through this thing. And she can talk to us about it, We were shopping one time, my first visitation trip, the 3rd day in New Mexico. And when she said, can I have, or I want, or will you buy, for the 475th time that day, I stopped in the middle of Walgreens drugstore and I sat down on the floor and I said, Alexandra, baby, this is just absolutely torturing me. I'm starting to feel like the only reason you want me here, or the only reason you're giving me any love in return, is because I can buy you things. And I said, that hurts really bad. And she starts to cry and says to me, well, that's not really it, Dad. I'm just afraid that you're going to go away again. I said to her, I am. I'm going to go away in 2 more days, but I'm going to be back again. I'm going to always be back. I'm going to always be here for you. And it was great. They had a little crisis come up where Tina had to leave town, and I was able to jump a plane and be back there for her. And so now she gets it. And we sat on the floor in the middle of the aisle of this drugstore and held each other and cried and talked to each other. These are skills I've gotten by making myself available to all that God has disclosed since the days that AA was discovered. So all I'm saying here is, this is my story, this is my experience. I wish you well with your experience and your recovery. And if you don't like therapy, for God's sakes, don't get in the way of your people that you work with who need it. You know, the book says we need extra stuff. So lighten up. If anything, we should be working harder on how we're going to be stronger, more understanding and compassionate of each other, instead of drawing all these arbitrary lines for behavior that aren't going to work anyway. God bless you. Thank you. Goodbye.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.